Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session. We're so glad that you're joining us here today as a part of the summit in our panel where we will be talking with some amazing and phenomenal women, and we will be talking about race. As you know, this has been a very difficult year around issues of race in America, particularly for Black people, and we are all having a lot of conversations. Today, I want to bring you into a conversation with some amazing women where you can hear a variety of perspectives about what's happening with these issues and what people are doing to grapple with them. We are really glad that you're here. We are interested in hearing your questions and comments, so feel free to drop them in the chat. And I would like to introduce our panelists to you before we get started. So first, I'd like to start with Adrienne Parker. She helps tech leaders, teams, and companies improve cultural competency and provide more equitable and inclusive spaces for all. She also helps mid-level professionals of color discover their purpose and gain clarity on how to reach the next chapter of their careers. She started her career development in 2008, or journey in career development in 2008, and since then has helped numerous individuals think strategically about their personal and professional lives and help them find clarity, set goals, and take action. In 2015, she began working in the tech recruiting space, and in 2018, after having managed several diversity-related programs and initiatives, she transitioned into diversity, equity, and inclusion full-time. Next up on our panel, we have Candace McDuffie. She is a respected cultural critic and music journalist whose work focuses on the intersection of race, gender, and entertainment. Her articles have appeared in various publications, including Rolling Stone, MTV, Entertainment Weekly, Glamour, and NBC News. Her first book, 50 Rappers Who Changed the World, is due out in October. And finally, we have Nicole Taylor. She is the author of A Joyful Pause, 52 Ways to Love Life, and the host of A Joyful Pause podcast, using a blend of meditation, yoga, and mind-body awareness. Don't make me mangle this word, Ayurvedic principles. Oh my goodness, okay. Nicole facilitates transformative offerings in self-care. Nicole is a 500-hour certified yoga teacher, a big leap coach, and an Ayurvedic health counselor. She has facilitated wellness instruction for organizations such as the Foundation for Conscious Living, Fairmont Park Conservancy, and the Billions Institute. So welcome everybody today to our panel. Thank you so much for joining me. I just want to start out by saying, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm grateful to be here as well, so thank you.
No, thanks for joining us. 2020 has been a really difficult year and a roller coaster, as I said, especially around issues of race for Black people. And so I thought that we could just start out by thinking a little bit about what is happening in that space for you as you think back over the summer. What are kind of the memories that really bubble up for you, the things that have been really important going on. We know Black people aren't a monolith, and you all are from different cities and working in different sectors. So I'd love to hear from each of you, how has this summer been for you, and how are these national issues manifesting in your life? And anybody want to kick us off?
I'll start. I'll start by saying we still need justice for Brianna Taylor, first and foremost. And that's been top of mind for me all summer, I have to say, working in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. I work mostly with tech leaders and companies, and I think, just supporting Black employees has been very top of mind, albeit I would say a lot of it has unfortunately been kind of check the box and prescriptive in a way. But I am hopeful that, some people are truly wanting long-term change and are going to be dedicated to truly examining the systems that are in place that are perhaps, holding us back from getting ahead and truly thriving, particularly in America. So that's what's been top of mind for me. And also just navigating this space as a Black person, as a Black woman in America. There's always this, balance that you're trying to find with being very objective in your work as a diversity and inclusion professional, but also, I am who I am. So that's my summer as of now.
Thank you very much. Someone else want?
Yeah, I think for me, in the freelance writing space, it's been a lot of calls for inclusion. We want to hear from Black writers, we want to hear perspectives. And I feel like that call should have been happening years ago, right? So for me, I'm grateful, that these publications are getting behind us and want to include our voices, but it needs to be ongoing. Not because you're bored during COVID, not because it's a fad and you want to be a part of the movement, but it has to be consistent. So I've been going back and forth between, gratitude and still having this almost kind of a rage, because, we have been suffering, and I need these places to understand that it's not a moment in time. This is permanent and it's ongoing. So it's been hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Nicole, what about you?
Yeah, it was a tough summer. I think kind of that 1, 2, 3 punch of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Brianna Taylor. It just felt like it kept coming. Like usually, this is not new for us. And yet before it was like you could kind of catch your breath in between those really crazy examples of police brutality. And this time it just felt like it kept coming. So I really felt like I had to lean into my spiritual practice and my wellness practice in order to just feel like I could navigate all of my own emotions and then the emotions of the people around me. I think in the wellness space, it was kind of like two different reactions. One in which a lot of people who seemed that they had never been activated around this issue before really rose up and got involved and, were reading and trying to educate themselves and unlearn some things. And then there was also a lot of spiritual bypass, like let's just throw love and light at it. And that's kind of all we need to do. So it's been this kind of roller coaster of trying to support people in, yes, love is a part of how we're going to change the world, but you can't use that to avoid looking square in the face what's happening in America and the way that systemic racism is just completely running rampant.
Mm-hmm. All of you brought up in your answers something that I think is important for people to hear, that yes, there's a lot of hope in things moving forward, but also there is this other side that doesn't always get talked about, the resentment and the rage, which is really a result of this not being something that just cropped up, but something that's been here for a really long time. And I think it's something that in conversations about race, we don't always want to like lean into or meet. And I do think it's important for people to understand that there are people that have lived their whole lives being aware of these issues. What are you hearing from people about those feelings that, as you said, Adrielle, maybe a little bit less about what you bring to the talk where everyone's talking about moving forward, or that really maybe don't get addressed as you talked about, Candace, in the place where people are calling for moving forward without reconciliation. And I love the term spiritual bypassing. So you all talked about navigating that boundary. What are you hearing or seeing out there? And how do you help people understand why that rage and resentment is something that needs to be met?
That's a good question. I think for me, my work, I don't necessarily want it to be palatable toward white people. When I write, I make sure that I'm talking to Black people, Black girls, especially Black women. This kind of subset that has always been ignored and unprotected and disrespected and dehumanized. So for me, it's centering my work on my people, unapologetically, and knowing that it does make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Anyone else? What are you hearing around that other side of the conversation?
For me, it's been a lot of what can I do to help? Help me understand. A lot of that is typically what I hear from people who want to perhaps identify themselves as allies, And I think, to Candace's point earlier, is like, it can't just be in this moment, right? This has to be ongoing. It should have been, ages ago, but here we are. So we take what we can get and make sure that we can keep carrying it, forward. But I think there's what can I do? And then there are people, that support the movement and what we're trying to do, but are often silent because they're afraid of saying the wrong thing, right? But change can't happen if we're too fearful to take action, right? We have to figure out how to learn shared language. We have to have these tough discussions, right? They're not tough for us. For me, it's not tough. It's a conversation that, it's top of mind all the time. But for some, it is a tough conversation, and that's okay. But you have to push forward and be willing to have these conversations to move the needle and make change.
What about you, Nicole? And I love that term, spiritual bypassing. I'd love to just, what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think to me that means using your practice in order to avoid the pain of what's actually happening to Black people in America, and wanting to kind of skip past that and go to a place of transcendence, rather than let's use the practice to get mentally stable and clear, because from that place we're going to all be able to come up with solutions together. And so knowing that something like civil rights is not going to happen like this, we're in the second phase of it that started way back when. So knowing that this is something we'll probably contend with for the rest of our lives, to me, the practice is able to support us in, okay, how do we get that clarity? How do we refill our cup? Because this is a marathon, not a sprint. How do we bring some of the feeling that we get when we do meditation, or when we do self-care, how do we bring that into solutions, rather than having it be something that you do over here and then this fight for equality is over here? Like, how do we synthesize them together? So I think there's interest in that. I think it's hard, I think it's a very human thing to want to feel better. And so I struggle with that sometimes myself, of like making sure that I'm not just, okay, I go over here and I meditate and I feel really good, and then I do my media diet and then I feel even better. Like, no, okay, you refilled your cup and now bring your attention back to what's happening and engage with it. So I think that feels like the tension, but I think it's a tension that we can navigate.
So in the wake of the uprising, a lot of people did hear from friends that were reaching out, or people that were saying, as you all said, like, I want to step up, I want to help. There was a lot of concern in those calls, a lot of apologies early on from people really saying like, hey, I hadn't attended to this before. What is it like making those connections across that boundary of people that are bringing their awareness to it, and people that, as you all said, are this is the daily reality of it? And if you were going to give it some advice to people, what does your Black friend need, want to hear? What are some of the ways that you can say something that is authentically connecting in this time when people are really feeling the pain and the grief, and knowing that this is an ongoing process, a marathon ahead as well? What should we be saying? What can we say?
I have one for that. First thing is, if you haven't talked to me in 4 years, don't text me after something like that happens.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, I think they're coming from a good place, but it lands like you literally went through your Facebook messages and texts and wrote something to every Black person. And that's not how to be an ally. That actually is a drain. So that would be the first thing. Like, don't reach out to people that you're not actually in contact with. And maybe think about why your circle might not be as diverse as you want it to be. I think the other part to me is also, I appreciated those texts that were like, this is crazy. How are you? No need to write back. I love you. Like, kind of giving that permission, where it wasn't a whole bunch of kind of like dumping of what they were feeling, because then I naturally, it's like a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, are you okay? Like, it's hard to turn that off. And I don't want to have to turn that off. It's part of, who I am. So I think there's that reach out if you want, but not the reach out that's a secret caretaking move. I think go to not your Black friends to be taken care of, unless you are Black too. And then, that might be a little bit of a different story. But that's just a couple of things that were top of mind for me when everything happened earlier this summer.
I saw a lot of reaction to those comments, ladies.
Yes.
I think, as you said, really well-meaning, but how does it feel to be getting that? What is the message that you're getting out of that that caused you to have such a reaction?
I mean, for me, it's editors coming to me saying, are we paying you enough? Are you writing about what you want? Are we doing a good job being sensitive to diverse audiences? You're not, right? If you have to ask those questions, you're not doing the work. So you need to actually start doing the work. You can't say Black Lives Matter and then not have any Black writers on staff or not pay us our worth, right? So if you're going to show up in this moment, right, with a little text or an email, you have to actually show up with, opportunity and money and realization that you have lived in this bubble for so long and it's been so unchecked. And you need to actually come forward in a real, meaningful way. I feel like it was just long overdue, and I was just like, is this how white writers get treated? Like, you're asking me if I need more money, like if I'm doing all right, like, and they never checked on me before. So it was just really eye-opening. Like, that as a Black person, that it's never equal. But to see that these people are finally seeing that as well is just, there are no words for it. So I hope these people actually step up and, put their money where their mouth is.
Mm-hmm.
Just to back up what both of you two just said, I second everything. And yes, to if I haven't heard from you, why are you reaching out now? But I think one thing that stands out for me is people that are like, oh, I just wanted to let you know I donated, or I, bought this thing from this Black person. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But are you looking for some sort of applause or gold star by letting me know that? Is the first thing. And second, to Candace's point, is you could dig deeper, right? Donating something to me, I mean, that's great. Please donate to organizations, but take it a step further and actually take some action yourself, right? Do the work. So if you know that, Black writers aren't getting paid, go fix it and then come back and tell me, hey, by the way, I'm giving you a pay increase because we noticed that this was a problem. I'm not asking you what we should do about it. I'm just going to go do it. So actually taking that initiative and not relying on Black individuals and especially Black women to do the work for you is so important right now.
Thank you all for that, and some good advice in there. In the midst of all of those calls, it was hard sometimes for Black people to talk to other Black people. And we have the opportunity here on this panel to talk to our sisters that are all listening here, BIPOC women on the call who also are having their own struggles around race. And it's beyond just thinking about what is that initial reading list. What can we say to each other to feed each other and to support each other? If you are texting your Black friend, what do you put in that text to connect and to help in this moment?
I think it's a lot of validation. I had something happen in the wellness world recently where kind of someone wrote what seemed like an apology, what they thought was an apology, but it was kind of more of a huge defense. Mm-hmm. And it did feel good to text my friend and to be like, did you see this? With the eyeball emoji. Just because I know that when she read that, we saw that exactly the same way. And it just makes you feel less alone and less kind of crazy when everyone else is going, oh, that's really great. It's like, no, that was not great. So I think there's that validation piece. I think it's also just someone that you can, and you've done this for me before, Susan, where just being able to cry about it in a way that I know I don't have to take care of you. I can just really have my pain and you can have yours and we can hold each other in that even over Zoom, but there's no kind of like need to pull it back in. So I think being able to do that for one another is really important. And it's like a weight off of the shoulders.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, those are good spaces to be in. What about you, Candace or Adriel? What are you doing to connect and to do your own healing?
Yeah. Same thing. I think what Nicole said is really important. Just having those people or that group of people where you can express yourself and be vulnerable is super important. And I think tied to that is just not always having answers or solutions to how we're feeling. Like sometimes you just need that space to just let it out. Like I don't want advice or a reaction necessarily. I just need somebody to listen. And I find that a lot of people in my circle tend to be the same way. And so I think, again, it's just so important for us to maintain that community and sense of connection.
Yeah.
For me, Black people are my biggest supporters. You know, they're my mainstays. They prop me up. They give me advice and they give me wisdom. I feel like during this time, you know, there's not much you can really say or do. It's just like a blow. I think Nicole mentioned it earlier. It's like a blow after blow. Like it's just exhausting. So I think just having people who've been there show up for me when I go into my mood swings, when I start therapy, you know, when things get really hard, just being there and supporting me no matter what happens is really important. And I'm lucky that I have people like that who do that anyway.
As a writer and for all of you that write and present content, what are you saying to other people to help them in this moment? Or what is the message in that for that Black girl that you center in your work and that you write to? What are you writing to her in this moment?
I mean, to the audiences, it's just, you know, we've been Black. We've been talking about our issues and now you're suddenly paying attention. And it's great that you're paying attention, but you have to consistently do it. And you have to understand that you benefit from a system that is built off of our backs. So I think, you know, it's hard, right? You don't want to tear apart your readers. You don't want to sit here and make them feel, you know, worthless. But at the same time, you need to get that message across. So I think for me, it's a balance of both, of telling the truth, but doing it in a way where I'm trying to encourage people to take action instead of just talking about taking action.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of, Candace, is like this this week was, I guess, the 100th anniversary of when white women got the vote.
Suffrage, yeah.
But like it wasn't, I don't know, it took some digging to find the article that was like, oh yeah, not everybody got the vote when that happened, you know? And I just appreciate you being out there giving that kind of perspective, because that's what's missing. Like that's the part that is the cognitive dissonance of like, oh yeah, everybody got the vote that was a woman. No, they didn't. That should be at the top of every article. That should be how we write about it instead of the thing that you have to dig to find, you know? That just struck me in terms of like current week.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that notion of feminism, right? Like feminism is so great, but so often Black women are excluded. And it happens, it's a historic occurrence, right? So when it happens, you don't think about it because it's gone on for so long. So I think it's also just being aware that history has always been against Black women.
It's so important as we're here for a Women's Equality Summit. Like, what do we do to build solidarity so that we really can begin to move things forward? What do we begin to do to what questions do we ask, or what pushes do people need to move that into a new space? What advice do you have for feminism? Go ahead, Adriel.
I think you just have to really keep reminding Black women that if you're truly supporting them, that you are supporting them, and constantly circling back to offer that support, right? It doesn't just end after a month or after the summer, right? And on the other side of that is just encouraging Black women to keep pushing towards being their authentic selves in all environments. Like drop the code switching, drop this idea of like not being enough, you know, especially in corporate professional settings. The majority of my career coaching clients are Black women. women. And I mean, we have conversations about, should I wear my hair like this in the workplace? Should I change my name for my resume? And to me, the answer is always no. Do what is comfortable for you. We're not conforming to anyone else's needs or desires or wants anymore. We're being who we are authentically. And the closer we can get to that, the more comfortable, we become. Everyone else is just going to have to accept it at some point. So I think there's two sides. Again, that support from the outside world, and then us just pushing to encourage other Black women to just be who they are and do it unapologetically. So.
That's interesting. I think that's interesting that you all are in different sectors and in different spaces. So how are issues of racism showing up in your particular sector? We heard a little bit about, what might be happening in tech or in the writer's room, but, each of these sectors is having their own kind of moment of reckoning. Even nonprofit a sector where there has been a lot of attention to this, or in the wellness sector where we might assume that there is a lot of connection. What's happening in your sector now, or if people are in that space, what can they do to engage?
I can continue off of what I was talking about a bit. I think one of the things that we see a lot, I work primarily in tech and tech adjacent industries. And we see a lot of microaggressions. So those like small slights and insults and snubs that really target marginalized individuals and groups. And they can, it can be verbal, it can be physical, such as someone touching your hair without permission, which I've had someone stop a meeting and touch my hair at work before, which, my goodness. But those are the things that we're still seeing.
Does that mean you shouldn't do that?
I mean, this isn't a petting zoo. But just, those microaggressions, I think, still exist, and they even exist over Zoom right now, right? So, someone's talking and you're sitting there, you're nodding, or you're making faces, or you're eating when someone's being vulnerable over a call, right? Like, those are microaggressions. And so we see those a lot being targeted towards Black individuals and Black women. And so being more mindful of that is really important.
Mm-hmm. What about for you all? How is this showing up in your workspace? What's happening?
I think in the nonprofit space, there's this, everyone went really hard on those anti-racism posts that they put on social media and on their websites. And I think it'll be interesting to hold ourselves and each other accountable, to go back and say, here's what you said when you were in the thick of it back in May and June. And now we're heading into September. Where are we? And what actually got done? What didn't get done? And not in a way, I don't think accountability has to be something where it's just a binary wrong or right. I think it can be a recommit. Like, I would hope that people take a look at what they said they were going to do. And if they didn't do it, then recommit and find and prioritize it so that those things actually come true.
Mm-hmm. Candace, what about you? Are you saying, you've seen a lot of change in entertainment, so there's plenty of disruption, and racism is just one element of it. What are you seeing?
I think publications are aware that they're not giving Black writers opportunities that they should have, right? So I think they realize, well, if this is about Beyonce, let's have a Black woman write about it, because she's, her experience is different. We're talking about hairstyles, let's have a Black woman talk about it, because, she's experienced it firsthand. And I think they understand how much more authentic the piece is when you have a Black writer interview a Black artist, right? The connection is different. So I think they're realizing the importance of having Blackness show up in a visible way. And I hope that it's not a fad, right? You're hoping that this is continuous and that they're realizing they've been in the wrong for a long time, but it's hard to say now. I'm optimistic about it, but I'm still worried.
Yeah, do the rest of you share that worry that people are going to want to revert back to the old normal? Or do you feel hopeful? Or
I'm
both?
hopeful, but I don't, I think some people will revert back, and I think some people will push forward. But I'm hopeful.
What about you, Nicole? Hopeful or?
Yeah, I think so too. I am hopeful. I hope that, you can't unsee what was done to George Floyd, and I hold that, that just, it crosses my mind randomly sometimes, you know, it was so heinous. And so I think that is true for many people, that was something where it was just so shocking that it activated them and they'll keep going. And I think there are a lot of people who will fall back asleep. But that's kind of the work, I think, is to keep reminding each other to wake up.
Yeah.
And as for your, oh, sorry.
Oh, but no, go ahead.
Just your other question about what can we say to women to keep, you know, since it's women's equality, it's like, I think it's just look at the language. I don't know, as a writer, language is so important to me. And like, look at the language. When you say women, before you write that, before you say that, just have a minute of breath to check in with who do you see in your head when you said that? And if you only see one kind of person, then that's the reframe that needs to happen, you know? So I just wonder about inserting that pause in those moments where that's how I think we'll wake up to, we're walking around in a soup of white supremacy, really, you know? That's how we're going to wake up to it, is like, oh wait, I said this and I only saw this picture in my head, so that's how I know that's, you know, that's what I've been swimming in. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think I think it's really true. There's a lot of like, who's the we? When we say, well, what do we all need to learn? Or who is the reading list for? You know, is the reading list aimed at people that are just now coming to it? Or is the reading list some really radical stuff to heal people that have been going through it, you know? Or who are the people that we are talking about? Who is the we? And even thinking about, you know, in working with companies, well, we want to recruit them. There it is. Who's the we? Who's the them? Because then it's always this seeing somebody as an outsider that's coming into the space, rather than like redefining who that we is and what that we looks like, which is a harder question. Because then it means at some point you have to ask, making space means somebody needs to create that space, and not that people have to step out of positions, but that we have to make bigger spaces if we all want to be in them. And that we do need to make sure that we center Black women. And that means some people not taking that article so that somebody else can write about Beyonce, who really is going to bring a voice to it that is authentic, something that's important. It's not an extra, it's the heart of the value too. So and that's interesting. So
and I think it's important to not be afraid to say Black. The POC, BI, POC, whatever you call it, like, please say Black, because I'm not a person of color, I'm a Black person. You know what I mean? It's a whole different experience. So I think just being unafraid with language and kind of wanting to communicate that direct population you're addressing is really important.
I notice as time goes on that we're starting to hear, well, what about all these other identity groups? And we don't want to position them against each other, and we want to be inclusive. And it always surprises me how quickly, in our rush to be inclusive, Black people don't hold the center anymore, you know? So yeah, that was a statement. That wasn't a question. Uh-oh.
I just wanted to make one comment on that. One thing that I often hear is like people referring to all Black people as African American, when in fact not all Black people are African American, because that's a term that historically we believe originated to identify people who are descendants of African slaves, like US born African slaves, right? So it doesn't account for Caribbean Black people or Black people born in Europe, or, you know, so just wanted to call that out.
That's really helpful for people to think. I think the terminology has lots of complexity within it. And so if you're not reading up on it, people sometimes don't know. And African American used to feel like a very proper term, but as you said, is it really descriptive of people throughout the diaspora? And to gain a better understanding of like, who are actually the Black people that are in my community, that they may be a real mix of people with their own histories. So we are in this place of massive shift, massive change. You all are working in different systems to create that change. You know, as you think about this, what is happening to us as a country, and how should we navigate what feels like just really overwhelming change, and in a lot of ways, overwhelming collapse? That went dark real quick.
Heavy question. Getting a minute to think about that one.
Yeah, but we're gonna come out of this year a different country than we came into it. That's for sure. So how do you keep attention on it when it feels so overwhelming? It does feel overwhelming.
I mean, for me, it's important to use my platform to talk about what Black people are experiencing. You know, it's not just COVID and unemployment, it's police brutality, it's having a Black woman possibly be vice president, right? It's so much. So I think it's part of my job to make sure people are aware of what's going on from a Black female perspective. But at the same time, I need to know when to reel it in, because I'm gonna go crazy. You know, I'm trying to keep myself afloat, trying to keep, you know, my family, my friends, my job, you know, afloat. So I think it's important to know when to uplift and when to kind of just pull back so you can also take care of yourself. So it's a tricky balancing act for me.
Yeah, I feel that. You guys feel that as well? I feel like I've been drinking from the fire hose of American
Definitely.
busy chaos. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think just everything you just said, I am in sync with, but just one thing I'm learning is to know when to step away. Like, you don't have to follow up and have a conversation about every single thing, and being okay with that. Protecting
And notice
yourself.
what you're absorbing too, because I think a lot of the consumption is mindless, right? So I'm scrolling. I cannot scroll. I can set an alarm to get off social media. You know, I can mute the alerts because it gets overwhelming. Sometimes you can't tell what's reality and what's not anymore. So it's really important.
What do you think, Nicole? You are in a healing space. How do we keep ourselves healthy in these times?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of routine for that. That's what anchors me, you know, knowing that in the morning, I will make some time for meditation. At lunch, I will make some time for movement, whether that's yoga or taking a walk. At night, I will have my phone off by a certain time so it doesn't disturb my sleep. Like, I think those little pieces of routine can be really healing. Also, I just notice my filter. I tend to be fairly optimistic. So when I find that like everybody's pissing me off, in addition to just like a car driving by makes me angry, it's like, oh, okay, wait. I'm gonna take a minute, you know, and just maybe like cancel. I'm a big fan of like, oh, I'm overscheduled. Oops, okay, I love you, and you're not gonna get the best of me tonight, so let's reschedule this call for next week. You know, just finding those pockets of space. I think we need space. Like, if you think about the constant barrage, both of information, but then also emotion, and then also negative images of Black people. I'm so tired of it, you know, like I want to watch it because I want to bear witness to what is happening. That video from Aurora, with the family that they just put down on the ground, like wow, you know, I had to not look at the news for like 2 days after that. It was so painful to hear those little baby girls crying like that, and to see that. Like, to me, if you're a human and you hear that, you go, oh shit, what do? I gotta make that okay. And the fact that those police didn't have that response is crazy. And I know I shouldn't be surprised by that, but there's a part of me that always wants to be surprised by that, because I want to believe that we're better than that as humans, you know? Anyway, the diatribe, but like, that was just an example of a time when I felt like I really had to just, you know, like call my dad, because he'll always remind me of the beauty of being Black, and talk to my husband and take a walk and just refill that cup so that I don't start to believe what I'm being shown, because that's somebody else's view of me, and I don't have to eat that. I have to bear witness to it because it's how the world is right now, but I don't have to internalize that. And so I think these media breaks and you know, spending time with people that love you and reminding ourselves of what's beautiful and joyful about being Black, to me, that's the antidote to what we're seeing, that it's only ever hardship, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we all feel hopeful, like there is a future that we're moving towards. I think about, I really love Afrofuturism, so I consume a lot about that. And being in those speculative spaces just really feeds me thinking about all the different things that we might do. And that's really exciting. So as difficult as this time is, and as much as I think, that really resonates with me, feeling really tapped out and overwhelmed, I start every morning with seeing Black bodies being abused. And I also feel like, I have to bear witness to it and I have to regulate, because that's not going anywhere. And so I think for me, that's the thing that says, like, well, people might think it's a moment, but that's never going to be okay with me. So I'm not going anywhere. But then it also feels like there's an open door, that there is some hope here, that there is another world that, where, as an author said, that we can begin to glimpse in the future around the corner. Like, what is the hope? What is the world that you are getting a glimpse of now that drives you forward?
For me, it's just, like I said, one of the things I'm passionate about is helping people develop cultural competency. So it's not getting us all to agree and be on the same page, but rather respecting other people's opinions and thoughts and ideas. And I'm starting to see more people from different walks of life, different intersectionalities come together and have, again, these difficult, tough conversations. And I really hope that continues. Again, we never have to agree or be aligned on anything, but it's just simply boiling down to being respectful of other humans.
Thanks. Yeah, what do you see in the future? What's your crystal ball show you that makes you feel like we're gonna be all right?
I mean, I think for me, it's normalizing conversations about race and Blackness specifically. I feel like more people are talking about what's going on without fear. Even if it's just observations, it's stuff they wouldn't even talk about a few months ago, a few years ago. So that awareness that's happening, I think culturally is really important. And I hope it continues.
That's great, thank you. Cole, what fuels your hope for the future?
Random. Right now I'm reading Octavia Butler. Just like, how did I get through my whole life without reading her? But I'm reading her right now and I'm like, damn, this is amazing. Just, the possibilities, I guess, is what lights me up. Like the possibilities of some form of healing that just comes all the way through, where we see each other and treat each other as whole and human. That's really what my hope is, and that everything that stands in the way of that, we're in this crazy pressure cooker right now. But I can't remember what I was watching, but it was something to the effect of like, you're squeezing, but then everything that needs to drop off does, so that you end up with this pure thing. So I think that's kind of what I'm hearing in my head of like, hopefully this squeezing is of service to a really evolutionary shift for us. That's the hope that I hold. It's kind of a big one. Might be dead by the time it happens. That's cool though. I just want it to happen.
I don't know. I've been thinking lately, if y'all have talked to me, I've been thinking lately, maybe. I've always thought I would never in my lifetime see a place where Black women may be treated with the love and respect that they deserve. And I decided this year, maybe I will live to see it. Stranger things have definitely happened this year. So why the hell not? If I'm gonna hope, let's hope big. Let's all manifest it together and hope really big. A lot of people out there on the call. Hopefully you all have some questions. So if you have some questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. And before we get to the questions, Phenomenal Women, where can people find you? Where can they find your writing? What books should they be picking up? I'm gonna drop some links to your books in the chat. Where can people find you if they wanna connect with you and continue this conversation with you?
My website is CandiceMcDuffie.com, Instagram @Candice.McDuffie. And my first book, 50 Rappers Who Changed the World, is out in October, and you can get that on Amazon. Pre-order, thank you.
Pre-order that book, yeah. All right, we got some Amazon links to that in the chat. Someone else, where can people find you?
I'll go. You can find me on, my website is ajoyfulpause.com. My book is A Joyful Pause, 52 Ways to Love Life. And it just offers you little things that you can do every day to come back to a sense of feeling in yourself and peaceful in yourself, or at least present, if not peaceful. I teach a meditation class on Sunday nights on Zoom, but all that information is on my website too. So hope to hear from you.
Excellent, thank you. And Adriel, what about you?
Yeah, I'm at adrielparker.com, also on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm highly engaged there. I post a lot of content and like to have a lot of discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. On my website, I have a host of resources that is sort of community sourced. So if you have resources related to the topic, please share them. And yeah, I don't have a book, but I will be buying both Candace and Nicole's books, and hope you do too.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, go buy those books.
Thank you. Yeah,
before you even get off the call, you can do something. So make sure you go and cop that excellent stuff that gives you some voice and perspective. And that's one thing I appreciate about all of you, is your ability to create that space, engage people in dialogue and thinking about these issues, each in your own different way. So thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions I want to get to, and one that we didn't talk about but that we kind of touched on with our first, with Kamala Harris. The election is coming up right around the corner. So the question is, can you each talk a little bit about the upcoming election and your thoughts about getting out the vote?
You know, I want to stay hopeful, but at the same time, they've already started the slander, started to eviscerate, you know, Kamala Harris. So I think it's important to realize that it's not going to be easy for anybody, right? So I'm trying to stay grounded in realism, knowing that voter suppression is a thing. You know, we're fighting for the post office. Like, what is life right now? So I think it's important to, you know, spread the message of how important it is to vote, but be aware of the obstacles that are in our way, specifically Black people and people of color.
Yeah, I saw something today where it said that Trump's talking about bringing law enforcement to the polls. And I was like, oh, hell no, not on my watch. So even though I can't control that, dude, I signed up to be a poll worker. So I just hope that people, like, there's so much we can do, whether it's being a poll worker, so you're there if you feel safe, you know, and you feel like you can, being there to watch to make sure nothing crazy is happening. If you are going to do a mail-in ballot, look and find out how soon you can get that ballot, and that you can also take that ballot to usually to your board of elections. And if you can do that, that's great, because then you just bypass the post office. Talk to your friends who wanted somebody else and are thinking about sitting it out, and see if you can kind of very gently, you know, support them in voting for some, you know, it's like I lose my words. It's so fucked up. I literally lose my words, and I like to write. It's crazy. Anyway, that's what you can do though.
I want to back up everything Nicole and Candace said. Also, just be mindful that we're still in a pandemic, and there are some folks who are high risk and can't get out to vote. So if you can go, you know, for example, pick up their mail-in ballot and drop it in a box for them, do that. Do what you can to just support voting.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that, you know, the issues that face democracies are real issues. And so this is not hyperbole. It's not a TV show. Like, this is the actual country that you live in, and that country can be very negatively harmed. We are not used to it, perhaps in our own electorate, but that that countries do fall, and we really need to do what we can to protect our democracy. Aside from saving the democracy, a lot of questions in the chat about what is the best way to be an ally, from Rob, from Lisa. What can a 60-year-old white woman who cannot go outside during due to COVID do? So what are some easy ways that people can support, some initial ways that people can support, or some challenges? Any ways that people can support that you like to share for people that want to get engaged?
I will drop in a link in the chat that is called guidetoallyship.com that I often refer people to. It's a great resource, but some items that you can do, in the moment, if you're unable to get out, is simply just using your platform, if you have one, through social media to share this and have discussions, have one-on-one discussions or group discussions with people in your family or friends, whatever you can do to continue the conversation and bring awareness. It's all about empathy and dialogue at the end of the day. So, and again, it doesn't stop after the summer or at any point. It should be continuous.
All right. What can people do if they want to do something? What can people do?
I mean, I think reading is so great. Researching, I'm like swatting flies. I'm outside. But doing the reading, doing the educating yourself about the history of people of color, of Black people in this country. I feel like in 2020, I didn't know, or I wasn't aware, when Google is right there. So holding yourself accountable to obtain that knowledge, so you understand where it's coming from, so you can have those difficult conversations with family members and talk about what we've been through, because you did the work to know about it, right? So I think I'm just a big advocate of just educating yourself and having those conversations.
And you can do that right at home with the same web connection you're using to watch us right now. So. Nicole, what advice do you have for people that want to take some action?
I would just echo what Adriel and Candace said, which is it's about conversations and education, I think. And you can more easily influence the people that are actually in your life than someone that doesn't really know you. So where you hear where you hear something that needs to be corrected, have the courage to correct it. When you're in your community and you see something that needs to shift, having the courage to bring it up. I think that stuff's really important.
Yeah, everyone wants to know how to have those hard conversations. They can be challenging. And I would just say also to just think about your own thinking, because your behavior flows from your beliefs, your values, and norms, what you embrace in your own mind to be true. So the more that you really unpack that and think about those little moments in your life where you learned what those rules around race are, and make sure that they're in alignment with what you think and what you believe, and not just this moment that you saw when you were a young kid that you just continue to reproduce throughout your own life. When should we start talking to kids about race? Comment in the chat. How do we talk to kids about race? And when is too early? It's never too early.
Yeah, I don't have kids, so I feel like I don't know that I can answer that. But what I can say is that there are growing resources, right? Like, I believe Kendi Ibram, he has a new book for kids, right? Ibram
Yeah,
Kendi.
he has a
Sorry, I
board
always
book.
switch his name. Yeah, so I think
baby book, like a chunky baby book. So I guess that tells you how early he thinks.
Yeah, Anti-Racist Baby, Ibram X Kendi, right?
Yep.
It's a great book.
Yeah, that's good. We can put that in the chat too. All right. Any other advice for parents or for people with kids?
I don't have kids, but again, I agree with you all. I don't think it's ever too early. And I think kids are curious, right? They're naturally curious, and they're going to come home and start asking things like, why does my friend have different hair? Or why is their skin different, right? And being able to have those conversations early on is important. And there's a lot of research out there that shows that the biases and stereotypes we form or have now as adults form at a very early age, right? So whatever we can do to mitigate those early on is vital and super important. And child brains have the ability to be changed very early on. So showing positive light to different types of people is really, really important.
Mm-hmm. And we know that kids all throughout their lifetime experience ideas about race differently. So however old your child is, there are lots of different resources at different ages for all of those kids, and different ways of thinking about that. How do you feel about having the first Black woman accepting a party nomination for the office of Vice President? How do you feel about that first? Are you excited about it? And what do you think about us still having firsts so long after we have arrived?
I'm excited about the possibility, but I'm also, terrified of how she's going to be treated during her election run. And also the premise that Black women need to do the work to make America better, that we're the mules of this country, that stereotype, that belief is kind of being perpetuated, sorry, whether Kamala, wins or not. So I think, I'm hopeful, but I'm also terrified, it's hard to be hopeful after surviving, hopefully, a Trump presidency. So I have mixed feelings about it.
All right, thank you. What do you think about the first?
I think it's a little surreal in a lot of ways. I don't think, I didn't envision ever seeing a Black woman in that position. So it's pretty incredible. But much like Candace, I'm fearful for her in a lot of ways. And I also recognize Black women, we always have to prove ourselves 10 times over that we're capable of just doing the bare minimum. And it's, she's going to have her work cut out for her. But I am hopeful.
Thank you.
I'm hopeful too. I think when I read it, there's water coming out of my face before I realized it was, it was such a immediate reaction. And she has her work cut out for her, but when you listen to who she comes from and how she was raised, she's ready to meet the task. Did I cut out there? Yeah, she's ready to meet the task. And I think, and she has a lot of support, and it's not going to be easy, but, Obama didn't have it easy. They're not going to make it easy. And yet she appears to have that deep gut that's going to let her come through it no matter what.
Yeah. And I think that there's so much challenges to the individual that's in that position. So that, all of you out there that are thinking about what can I do, think about the way that you support the historic nature of this moment. Whatever you think of the candidate, make sure that you think about the language. Up near me, there is a sign, a pejorative sign up already outside of somebody's business, doing some name calling of both of the candidates. So we're just in a really toxic communication environment around these issues. So that's something else you can do, is to think about addressing language that you might hear around it in the next few weeks as we run up to the election. So hopefully we'll have lots of firsts to go, so that we won't have any more firsts. And also to remember, as the same with Obama, having a candidate who is Black doesn't mean that anti-Blackness stops. And we know, in fact, that it really created this boomerang effect after Obama. So we really need to be mindful that anti-Blackness persists, even as we see more Black faces in some places. There's still a lot of work to do. So keep your foot to the pedal. All right, last words for the road. I don't want to leave. I want to I'll stay on and have chit chat for the rest of the day.
It's been so much fun.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your perspectives, for allowing people into what is sometimes an unheard conversation, but a really important conversation that needs to be centered if we're going to talk about anti-Blackness and white supremacy. Last words. Would love to hear from you all. Candace, let's start with you. Last word.
No pressure, right? I think mine is just stand up for Black women.
That's beautiful. All right, thank you. Adrielle, last word. What do you think?
I second that. Don't be a bystander, be an upstander, and keep the conversation going.
I love it. Nicole, what are you going to say to bring us out?
Yeah, I keep the conversation going, and also just always a plug, do something that makes you feel centered in yourself, because we need stability to create solutions.
It's excellent, excellent advice, ladies. I'll say to everybody, we're going into a really hard season, so fill up your cup while you can, and make sure that you take some active participation, because no matter who you are or what race you are, the fight for equity and the fight against white supremacy is your responsibility. So I invite you all into the fight. I know that these phenomenal women will be there, so connect with them, buy the books, listen to the podcast, and make sure you take that advice to bring some action into your own daily environment. So wishing us all luck as we get through a really difficult fall, and hopefully we come out of here evolved. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.